Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Kensthetic, and in today's video we will be exploring my experience of when I visited Cuba. Before we get started, do not forget to subscribe by hitting that red subscribe button down below. And if you guys enjoyed this video and if you guys end up learning anything from this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and remember to comment down below. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I went to Cuba last year, May 4th to May 7th, 2018 for my birthday. In case you guys did not watch my Q&A video, my birthday is May 6th, so I left to come back home the day after my birthday. So the best time to visit Cuba is from the months of December to May, which is when the weather is dry and you have more sunny days, blue skies. And then in June is when the wet season begins in Cuba. And then hurricane season in Cuba is from August to October. So one thing with the weather of traveling to places is when it's the peak season, or aka the best season to visit a place, the ticket prices are going to be average or higher than average. And then when the weather is like, you know, monsoon season, hurricane season, rain, snow, whatever, the prices are going to be lower. So when you are looking at tickets in general to go anywhere and you see on Secret Flying or any of these websites that they have low fares for a certain time period, always check the weather. So next is where did I stay, city-wise as well as housing-wise. So I flew into Havana, Cuba, and when I got there, we stayed there for one night, and then we went to Varadero, not sure how to pronounce it still, but we went there for 2 nights. And we stayed at an Airbnb for 1 night in Havana. So the ride from the airport to our Airbnb was about 25 minutes. The Airbnb was so bomb, and it came with Wi-Fi, which I'll specify why that is like such a keynote later on in this video. The Airbnb that we were staying at was basically a penthouse in this like apartment building complex, and it was so nice. So the Airbnb we stayed at had 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. It had a kitchen, it had a living room area, it had a dining room area, and most importantly, it had an amazing view of the beach, which was nearby. I think it's called the Malican, not sure how to pronounce it, but the view was amazing. So on this trip, it was a total of 4 of us. It was enough room for everyone to sleep. It was enough room for everyone to get ready comfortably, which is a very important thing to me when I'm traveling and I'm staying somewhere. I always want to be comfortable. The Airbnb that we stayed at in Havana was $70 a person per night. And then when we went to Varadero, we stayed there for 2 nights, and we basically stayed at a resort called Vista Ocean Azul, and it was recommended to me by a friend who had visited Cuba before me, and we stayed there for 2 nights, and it was $280 a room. So the next thing is, what did we do? What was our itinerary? On May 4th, when we arrived in Havana, it was kind of the morning or early afternoon. So we basically went to our Airbnb, put our stuff down, like showered, changed, and we knew we wanted to do a tour around the city to get to see the most important historic and unique sites of Havana. And we exited our Airbnb to go like into the city to find a tour. We basically went outside and we bumped into a taxi driver who did speak like English. Like he spoke English almost fluently, so we felt more comfortable riding with him. So he kind of became our designated driver for the rest of our trip. So we met up with him outside, and he brought us to like the downtown Old Havana area where we were able to find one of those old-fashioned cars to do our tour. And the tour basically took us to La Plaza de La Revolution, MiraMar, and Hotel Nacional de Cuba. I'm terrible at my pronunciation in English, so just imagine my Spanish. So I'm trying, y'all, I'm trying. So the next day was May 5th, and basically that was the day we were gonna check out of our Airbnb and head over to Varadero. So the drive from Havana to Varadero was about 2.5 hours. So when we got to our resort, Ocean Vista Azul, it was so amazing. It was so beautiful, but also it was so many people because the resort is pretty large. The resort had 3 pools, 7 restaurants, and the view of everything from that resort, the view of everything in that resort was so breathtaking. Like, I didn't regret staying there at all. So moving on to the next part, which is basically where did we eat, what did we eat, what was the food situation, and this is the real tea. So the food in Cuba was not the best. And when I say that, I want to explain why it's not the best before I straight out come out and say like the food in Cuba was not it. So the thing with Cuba is that it is a communist government, and the food is rationed amongst all restaurants, amongst all households, amongst everyone who prepares food. So basically, if the country does not receive or the country does not distribute any seasoning today, the food portion that is served in restaurants and households, they wouldn't have any seasoning if they, you know, didn't have any on back stock or whatever. So most of the times, most of the places we went to eat, one, they probably didn't have seasoning. Two, they probably didn't have like the meat of choice we wanted for the day, such as, you know, no chicken or no steak or no beef, just because it depends on what the country receives on a daily basis. So where did we eat? We ate at one restaurant. I'll go ahead and include the name of that restaurant on the screen, but the food was pretty good. The drinks were very good, and I would honestly say that that was the best meal that I had during my time in Cuba. People also suggested this place called LaGuardia Hotel or LaGuardia Hotel, not sure how to pronounce it, but I think we had to do a reservation for that restaurant, and it was basically booked until later in the night, and we were starving like as soon as we wanted to eat. So we were just like, we don't want to wait, and we also don't want to go there later because we were trying to go out at night. So we didn't go to that restaurant, but everyone recommended it. People who lived in Cuba, people who I know visited Cuba before, they were like, you have to go eat at that restaurant. So if you are going to Havana, I would definitely recommend going to that restaurant. And then when we got to Varadero, we basically ate on the resort because we paid $280 for 2 nights. So we were like, we're gonna get all of our coins worth. They have 7 restaurants, so we have to find something here that we want to eat, you know. First of all, on that resort there were 7 restaurants, but if you were not there at 5 o'clock to do a reservation, it was kind of over for you getting a seat at the table for the night. People were lining up starting at like 4 o'clock trying to make reservations for dinner, and then once you missed your reservation, like there was no makeup, and then each reservation took a while because it did take them a while to prepare the food. But the resort also had a buffet which was open longer hours than the actual restaurants, so if you did not have an opportunity to get a reservation for dinner at one of the restaurants, you could have had dinner at the buffet. And then we also went to another place. I'll go ahead and include the name on the screen, but basically on May 7th, when we drove back from Varadero to Havana, when it was time to get on our flight to go back, our driver told us like, oh, we have some extra time, so I'll bring you guys to this place that has really good sandwiches, and you guys could get something to eat before you guys get on the plane. And I was like, cool, no problem, I'm trusting your word. And the food was actually good at this place, and the drinks were also good. The ambiance in that place was really good too, so I would definitely recommend that place. The next thing I wanted to address was the nightlife in Cuba. So as I mentioned, the one night, aka the first night that we were in Havana, we were like, okay, we're gonna go out. So we, you know, got dolled up and took a cab to this place. I'm gonna include the name on the screen because I don't remember it right now, but it's basically like a museum that turns into like a club at night, and a lot of people recommended it to me as well as the driver that we had. So we were like, okay, we'll go ahead and give it a shot. So we drove there. It was probably about 20 minutes away from our Airbnb. We drove there and the place was closed, and we were like, what? And they had like signs up saying like, you know, we're closed for construction, we'll open up like basically the next season, like in the summer. So we didn't end up going there. We didn't have time to go there. It wasn't open while we were there, so we basically ended up going to like this local restaurant, getting some drinks. We went to a club. I'm gonna go ahead and put the name of that club on the screen, but the club was really cool. They had good drinks. It was like a good ambiance. It seemed like the place that everybody was kind of going to, like everybody came with their heels. People had sections. I'm like, check them out. And the music was actually good, so I'm gonna find the name of that club and include it on the screen. But besides the club situation, nightlife in Cuba seemed pretty lit. A lot of people were like going out dancing. Like they have a lot of like dancing clubs, dancing events if you are into dancing. The next thing I wanted to address is there cell phone service in Cuba? And yeah, don't want to say no and I don't want to say yes. Let me explain. So basically, if you go to Cuba with your Sprint cellular device and you think you're going to get that little text when you land, like calls are 20 cents per minute, texts are free, web is free, it's not gonna happen. I think I got a text, but basically my phone did not work in Cuba. So In Cuba, they don't have cell phone service. What they do have is Wi-Fi. So they sell these Wi-Fi cards, and the cards are about $1.50 to $3 US dollars, and they provide you with service for 1 hour. So one card gives you 1 hour worth of service. And these cards can be used at designated areas. So hotels, parks, some cafes and restaurants, and then they do have like designated areas on the street, and they usually have a sign that you can tell, like, you know, if you activate your card here, you'll get Wi-Fi. So with that, I will provide a tip to make sure you have everything planned before you get there, just in case, you know, you're not in a place that has Wi-Fi access. Even if you do buy the card or whatever, just make sure you have everything planned out as far as like places you want to go or anything you have to look up. Make sure you do that before you get on that plane. So the next thing is, what is the currency situation in Cuba? So Cuban's currency is called CUC, and basically I did research before I went to Cuba, and I found that if you converted US dollars to either euros or Canadian dollars, you'll get a better exchange to CUC rather than converting US dollars straight to CUC. But keep in mind that when you get to Cuba, they only convert to CUC. So you can't come with US dollars and say, can I have this in euros? And then take your euros and say, can I have this in CUC? You need to pull up with your euros or pull up with your Canadian dollars and exchange them for CUC. So basically when you leave the airport, there is a money exchange counter by the taxi stand. And I basically went there and I converted some of my euros to CUC there. And the rationale behind me converting only some of it was that I didn't want it to be a situation where at the end of my trip I had extra CUC and I had to convert it back to euros or back to US dollars, just because when you do convert from CUC back to euros or back to US dollars, you do end up losing some of your money. So keep that in mind. I would say when you get there, when you get to the airport, when you get to that money stand at the airport, only convert some of your money. And then if you do want to convert some of your money later on in the trip, they do have Casa de Cambio throughout the city where you could convert more money if need be. And then what did we do in Varadero? So as I mentioned, we did arrive on May 5th, and when we got there, it was kind of the evening time, so we went to the pool, we chilled by the pool, we relaxed by the pool. The pool was really great. It was really relaxing. It felt good. And then the next day, which was my birthday, May 6th, we ended up going on an excursion, which we did book through our resort, and it was basically a boat ride that took us to Cayo Blanco, which was an amazing, beautiful beach. Like, it was really breathtaking, and the boat was so lit. The boat came with unlimited drinks, unlimited rum, unlimited mixed drinks. So I'm just gonna leave that there. And also they gave us the option to snorkel, but I didn't snorkel just because, as I said, the boats had unlimited drinks and your girl can't swim. So I stood on the boat and I watched everybody snorkel, but it was great. I had a great time on my birthday. The boat ride was amazing. And then the next day, May 7th, was the day we left Varadero to head back to Havana for our flight back. So I feel like we didn't do much on this trip as far as excursions, but we did have a great time. I feel like it was a relaxing trip with, like, you know, a little bit of turn up, a little bit of adventure, but it was more relaxation, which I absolutely love, especially when it comes to traveling for my birthday. So 2 other tips that I have when traveling to Cuba is, 1, pack backup food. Like, pack some ramen, pack something that you can make easy and quick. Given that, you know, you might have limited resources, you might not have a stove in where you're staying, you might be staying in a hotel the whole time and you don't have access to like a kitchen like we did in our Airbnb. Pack backup food, because you never know what situation you're gonna run into. And my second tip would be to, if you do speak English and you don't speak Spanish, try to find a driver that speaks English or understands English, so that it's easier for you to get around and you do feel safer getting around. And it's also cheaper, especially if you do want to go to other cities. Like, I know Havana is the main city people fly into, but people do explore into Varadero, which is the city we went to, and Viñales, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it is another city that people drive to from Havana. So if you do want to go to Varadero, go to Viñales, make sure you try to find a driver who can probably take you around for the whole trip. And then the last question is, would I travel back to Cuba? And honestly, I feel like here it is. I feel like I would go back to Cuba just because it is close by. It was a 3-hour flight. However, the situation around the food, I'm not sure if I could do that again. Like, I'm one girl that when I travel, I need the eats. I need all of the good food. So I feel like if I'm ever in a situation where it's hard for me to access food or hard for me to access good food, then I don't think it's for me. But however, I do feel like I would go back to Cuba, but not right now. I would probably wait a while, and also I would not be able to go for a long period of time just because of the whole food thing. Like, I was really scarred. Comment down below and let me know how you guys feel about food when you are traveling to a place, because that is one of the main things that I look forward to when I travel. So that is basically my tips, my advice, my info based on my experience in Cuba. Comment down below and let me know if you have any thoughts about anything I discussed in this video. And if you guys have any additional questions, go ahead and comment down below and I will try to answer to the best of my ability. Make sure you guys are reading the questions down below, are reading the answers. I kind of want it to be like a discussion board, kind of like, okay, I came to this video because I'm interested in visiting Cuba. These are some questions that other subscribers had. Like, let me see if I have any of the same questions. Let me see if I can learn from any of these questions. It might not have been a question that you thought of after watching this video, but just read down below, see what questions people have, see what answers I provide, and join in on the discussion. Before you guys head out, do not forget to subscribe by hitting that red subscribe button down below. And if you guys enjoyed this video, which I hope you guys did, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. And before you guys head out, I'm gonna go ahead and include my recent uploads from our Around the World with Kensthetic series. And until tomorrow's video, I will see you guys later.